and we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tony Carcamo, President of Civil CAD Learning Solution, and also President of the DFW BIM Infrastructure User Group. And thank you for joining us today for the Revit Q&A with industry experts. So our experts, if y'all want to go ahead and introduce yourself. So we'll go ahead and start with Rena, if you want to go down the list, and Zon, Todd, and Joe, and Newman, and Vicki, if y'all want to introduce yourselves, go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Rena. I am Architectural BIM Manager at Fishbeck in Grand Rapids, Michigan. On to you, Noman.
Hi, my name is Noman Maisarwala, aka BIMologist, aka Dr. Revit, and I work for JGM Inc. in Los Angeles as a BIM director there.
Hi, everyone. This is Zon with a reseller, Repro Products in Smyrna, Georgia. So I handle on the AEC side all of the architecture-based software, Revit, AutoCAD, Navisworks, things like that.
And hi, everybody. My name is Joe Solis. I have a consulting company and a digital 3D surveying, as-builting company, Digital Conditions and BIM Optimize. Been operating out of the DFW area for about 6 years now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vicki Harris. I am firm-wide BIM leader at HKS, and I am based in the Dallas office. You're on mute, Tony.
We have two more experts who will probably join us a bit later. They're probably running a little late, so we'll go ahead and kind of get started. So the first topic we want to talk about is implementation and deployment. So what is, y'all's, I guess, company standards, or what are you seeing deploying a new version of Revit? If somebody wants to step in and answer that question.
Yeah, I can somewhat explain. Used to be before that you would create a deployment with a batch, basically download the whole 30 gig or whatever gig payload and then create a deployment. Now Autodesk has switched to mostly online deployment creation. It's good, but with the limited customizability, at least for Revit, and for AutoCAD too, even you can specify a custom INI file. The trick is to make sure you add that INI file in the correct directory before it will work. So I have to sometimes struggle with that when I'm working with the people that are in the office installing versus outside of the office installing. So I can, if you want, I can kind of quickly share some how I do it, if that's okay with you, Tony, quickly.
Yeah, go ahead. And if you want to share your screen.
Yeah, I'll do that. And okay, there we are. Okay, so just let me see if you can see my screen. So once you log into Autodesk account, basically what you have to do is, under products and services, go to custom install, make sure you have the right permissions to be able to do that in the first place. Then basically what you have to, let me just show you one that is already done, and then we can kind of trace back and quickly just show you how that is done correct throughout the workflow here. So you can select multiple products that can be, I typically just use one at a time because I can deploy it. Oops. Sorry, my product key got, okay, so I'll go back this one. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll just do create new. And then within that, let me just select Revit quickly. Revit. And then with, it still shows me that it's embedded in it somehow. So anyways, what you can do is, what the nice thing is, you can download the latest and greatest patch included in it. Then you can customize the path locations as such. And then you can also select which packages you want to install. Typically, I'll not install the batch print utility, and work sharing monitor I'll uninstall because I have a cloud-based work sharing device and this doesn't work right. So you can pick and choose which essential content you need. US, UK, whichever in our case would be US English. And then if you have a Revit server, you can pump in the address right here. And then this is where you specify the custom INI file. So once you do that, I call it, whichever version it is, the INI file. Also, you can pick and choose which add-ins you can install automatically with, which is nice, at least. And then under the content, you can go and pick, make sure you pick this content as well as the content right here where it says essential content. So the English essential content, use this one. So because you will need it, otherwise you need both of them to get it to work right. And then basically you create that, and then after that, what you have to do is download the deployment from Autodesk will download a exe file. So let me just click the next file, next right here. So next, and once you do that, give it a name, So I'm just, so here's the option here, whether you want to install or deploy. So install will basically download and start installing the software on others' machines. I typically choose deploy because I want to inject my personal customization and stuff. So if you are doing a remote install, you can just give that a CPath somewhere as well. And then whether you want to, I would highly recommend checking this box, use symbolic links. This way, if there are any shared contents, Revit will just will use those that are already there on the hard drive. And then you agree, sign your life away, and then download. And what happens is you download a exe file as such. And then once we do that, let me just quickly switch to that. Right here, just a second. Okay. So I'm gonna switch my share here for a second. Give me 1 second. Let's see. I'm sorry, I have to navigate Zoom a little bit, so my apologies if there is any hiccups here. I'm trying to get the, oh, right there. You share, and I will do this one. So what it does is basically it downloads this exe file. So I have a network one that I put it on my server, and then I have one that basically remote. So I tell users, step one, run this. What it does is it dumps the download file on their C drive, and then I say, don't install using the included batch file, rather use my batch file instead. And then basically I tell them, hey, make sure you are connected to the VPN. What I do also is copy my customized INI file into the right folder where my image was downloaded. So then it will use it. So it needs to be in this image folder where the collection.xml file is. And then once that, basically you run the same command that Autodesk has embedded in it in the batch file that when you download it, you'll see that. And then I copy some extra stuff into the user data cache, download, customize keyboard shortcuts.xml. So if you do that, and then also copy that. And next I also do is install the plugins that I need in the background. So it could be ID8 or whichever plugins you want. You can easily install those, and it goes through that process, and boom, it is more customized automatically rather than people getting that error, file not found, things like that. So, oh wait, hold on, I didn't show you the other file. My apologies. I'm sorry, so sorry. My right there. Let me see. My apologies, since you're like there. Okay. So what this is basically I do is, first and foremost, I copied these files over, into the image folder that somebody downloaded onto their computer. Then I basically go and copy this one also. I copied to this both folders. I think it's the collection.xml file, which is in this folder that you will see that. And that's all. And I go ahead and copy other files like my keyboard shortcuts. I'll copy that to both their local user app data as well as in the user cache data. So any new user automatically gets that keyboard shortcut. And this is where I install the plugins. So that's all I had to show. Hopefully this was helpful, but yep, that's all I got.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I heavily customized my INI file, by the way. So
okay.
Yeah.
Does any of the other experts do anything differently when they do deployments or use any other third-party apps or different workflows for their deployments?
So one thing that we do at HKS, we were trying to get to this stage before COVID and remote work all became a new norm, is, we've got 1,400 employees that we have to manage and make sure that they are getting every single update to Revit and are able to install the new one. So we followed a similar process to what Numan showed there. But what we also use is SCCM along with Software Center, so that if there is an update to Revit, a new build that we need to make sure everybody gets installed on their computer, they're able to do that directly through Software Center at their own time. And we're trying to get to a point where we were pushing them out to where it was mandatory and getting that to work. And we found a few nuances with that, kind of it hitting people at inconvenient times. So we've decided that we'd just put it in Software Center and then get back to a point where we put a deadline. So if we rolled out a new update for Revit 2022, you have 14 days to install it on your own. And then if you don't install it within those 14 days, then yeah, it's going to try to install it at the most inconvenient time for you because you didn't install it when it was convenient. And I think that has been really great. And obviously it helped a whole lot with remote work. The new deployment method through Autodesk was a little bit challenging at first for everybody to kind of get their hands around how that works. But once we figured it out, that really helped us with this whole SCCM and Software Center setup, because now if you use the web deployment, which basically you create that exe type of file that Numan showed, you add your customization to it. When somebody clicks that install button off of Software Center, it's not trying to download all whatever many gigs of files from your own network. It's actually going to the internet and trying to download it from Autodesk's server, which could be closer to you than your internal server system going through a VPN. So we did see a great amount of increase in time in terms of how quickly somebody could install it. We did run into a hiccup with that here recently and something on Autodesk's side. I'm not the technical person that gets into all of that, but I do believe we've worked out a solution. But yeah, we did have a couple of our installers break after they were already available to the general public through our Software Center. But yeah, that's the only additional thing we do. And I mean, for those of you that are here and in the management side, if you know nothing about SCCM and Software Center, chances are your IT department is already using it. And if they aren't, they might be using a system similar to it in order to make sure everybody's computers are getting updates and other things that are kind of mandatory from the IT side. So I definitely suggest anybody interested in wanting to deploy and implement Revit or any software, a little bit easier to talk to their IT side and see what they're using. And if they are using SCCM, there's a lot of options there and opportunities.
Yeah. So the new, to just jump on that, the new technology, the Microsoft, we used to be called Intune, or now they call it Endpoint Manager. Basically, they've taken the SCCM online, and your deployments can be set up online as well, and then pushed out to the users automatically. So if depending on the IT, you can open up your brand new laptop, and then you log in, and all the necessary software gets installed through that, as well. So I kind of did a poor man's job here because of the fact that it's a smaller company here. In the past, other companies have done that because I'm work with batch files pretty good, and also the fact is the batch file Autodesk uses a batch file, but it doesn't matter. I can work around any of those.
Yeah. Cool. For all the attendees, feel free to post questions. If you've had issues about deployments or had questions about deployments, go ahead and post questions in the Q&A section, and we'll have one of our experts, industry experts, answer the question as best as possible. So anybody else have any inputs on your deployments and things you've done?
I'll add that to tie the two pieces together. I saw apps in your INI file, sir, and then some of my clients also use the Software Center, Vicki, and they also and I'd be curious. I'm going to turn this comment into a question. I'd be curious to know, like, one of my clients is actually putting their plugins, right? And not everybody, they're a multidiscipline firm, so not every body needs the same ones, and then there's preferences and da. But the licensing authorization through, anyways, each app could be different. So that's kind of a sticky point on which apps make it onto Software Center. I'd be very curious to know how that's being handled, just to kind of spin up a furthering point on deployment.
I think what you can do is you can create groups based on the usage for the different type of people, and assign those into the, you can do the individual plugins and assign them to a group of users, so you can pick and choose which ones can install what or automatically get installed that way. So
are you referring to Software Center or your INI file?
Oh, you mean the INI file or Software Center? I'm talking Software Center. Which are you talking about? The INI file that you want something in?
No, that's that. I think we're on the same page. I was just proposing that that my clients put the apps on the Software Center.
Yeah.
I was just curious as to how everyone else is doing it. That's all.
Yeah, we put them on Software Center too. And the nice thing about SCCM is you can build queries. So we have queries set up that when computers check in, they look at what's on that computer. And for example, if you don't have Revit installed, then your Software Center is not going to show you any Revit related applications. The other reason we try not to build our plugins, even our custom in-house built plugins, into the Revit deployment, because those plugins will update more frequently and not in line with a Revit update. So those updates need to be available individually to the users when those updates are available. So we are trying to get to a place where all of that kind of stuff is individualized and installed. The problem we do face is that somebody will not install the update that they need when they need it. So that's where I was saying we're trying to get to a culture where we start to give people a timeline and a deadline to do it. And if they don't do it, then it's going to force it on their computer, just like the Windows security updates that all of us are used to now. So yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's move on to our next question. So how do you handle multiple offices using multiple versions? So one office is maybe on 2021 using Revit, but another office is on 2022. I don't know if you have run into those situations, but how do you handle situations like that?
So I'll kind of start up on that one, because this one is like one of the things that I really, really want to change at HKS, and we've got a goal and an initiative around it. We aren't so much office-based, but project-based, and what typically happens is, a project starts today, and our mandate is that any new project that starts right now should start in Revit 2022. Unless there is a very specific client requirement that requires them to start in something different. And even that we will discuss and determine why that client is so adamant in an older version. But nonetheless, that's how it is. And then once a project gets started, many of our projects are so large scale that they span over a couple of years. And teams just are so afraid of upgrading because of past experiences, the whole 2016 to 2017 snafu that Autodesk created for project teams. Some of them just have a bad taste in their work from past experiences. So we kind of discussed with project teams early on that, you need to think about the time frame of your project and make sure that you talk about when you're going to upgrade. We are in the process of rolling out a new BIM XP for us, and we have included that as a part of the BIM XP, that you have a Revit upgrade plan for your project. And you kind of discuss that and document it there, but then you also have checkpoints where if the timeline of the project increases, then you check back in and say, okay, we're going to go into, this project is going to continue into 2025 now. Therefore, we need to go ahead and discuss when we're going to upgrade this project for each at milestones or whatever. But aside from that, I have the goal I just talked about is I would like to see HKS get to a place where we as a technology team only support 2 versions of Revit. So the newest and the year before. So if that was in place, then I would be able to happily say that all projects at HKS are 2022 or 2021. And the ones that are in 2021 are slowly upgrading to 2022 or are waiting for 2023 to come out and update to that automatically. And yes, we would have some projects that are in older versions and we would support them, but those project teams would have to have a very, very good reason to be in those older versions. I think a lot of them are now starting to realize that when they hold back on upgrading, they are now losing support, not just from us within HKS, because we will do everything we can to support them. But once it gets out of our hands, if we have a crashed Revit file and we just cannot do anything with it, there's only so much Autodesk can do if we take a file to them, which I am sad to say, but we do have a project or 2 at HKS that's still in 2016. If I take that to Autodesk, there's very little that they can do for us. And so teams have learned the hard way that, oh, I'm stuck in a version that even Autodesk doesn't support anymore. And I'm
going to say very little that they will do.
Yeah.
Not can do.
Yeah, I mean, and they do know that we have, we're an enterprise agreement company with Autodesk, so we do have a little bit more weight. But the thing is even when they are able to do it, it's usually a week or 2 out, because many of them, like if you're in 2016, we've been told that even their development teams don't have an active version of 16 running anymore. So they have to go dig all that out and get all that set back up on their side. So by that time, the HKS team has already lost 3 weeks worth of work. And then that's when they realize that, oh, if I would have just bit the bullet and went ahead and spent the week or less to upgrade my project and deal with it, I wouldn't be in this boat. So yeah, for some of our project teams, it's been learned the hard way, but it's been a good lesson for them. And I think a lot of them are realizing. I do think putting in these little protocols within every document you can to remind people to think about upgrading it is super helpful. But I'll stop on that. That's where we're headed. That's what we're doing now. But I do wish there was an easier way. Instead of, and I will say, I know everybody's like, well, it'd be great if you had the rollback button. I don't feel that that's a good idea. I know with AutoCAD, that was a nice little perk to have so you could deal with that. But with Revit, it's just, I think it'd be more problematic than helpful if you had a way to save it back to an older version.
I completely agree with Vicki on that. And we faced a lot of similar situations. The one unique thing about Fishbeck is that we have all of our disciplines in-house. So making sure that all disciplines are on the same version, the same build, as a matter of fact. And Noman and I have, since both of us are directly experts as well, we have faced a lot of situations where just being on a different build of Revit can create immense corruption problems. And that's one thing, when I first interviewed at Fishbeck and I was introduced to the IT manager, I went, shook his hand, and I said, "You're my best friend from now on." And that's just the way it has to be. The BIM leader and the IT leader have to work hand in hand for over everything, just to make sure that every team member is on exactly the same build in order to prevent corruption issues. Now, our team, we do have this initial reluctance to upgrade from whichever version there are. We've got projects spanning from 2019 going on to 2022. We've got some 2020 and 2021 projects. And again, it all depends upon what we're doing at that point of time. Yes, we do have the mandate, and Fun Story project started recently, and had to read, and I had to be very, very firm. I had to basically send hate mail to the project leader saying that we have no reason whatsoever to keep the project in 2019. Please, please, please just point me towards whatever you've got, and it can be upgraded to 2022. And that's what project teams do need to realize, that there is a misconception, something that I ran into some time ago, where one of the team members was thinking that they would need to open each model and save it and into the new version, things like that. If the project is on BIM 360, upgrading the whole project with all of the linked models is only a matter of a few mouse clicks. Just that message does need to be passed along. And as far as making the transition from an older version of Revit to a newer version of Revit, Vicki, I've forgotten what 2016 looks like, by the way. And that should tell you how sympathetic most people would be to projects being done in older versions of Revit. So most of the core operations that you have been performing in 18, 19, 20, 21, they are still similar in 2022. So I think it's a lot of it is a fear factor of how it is that we're going to work in the new version, and we're going to be bombarded with a whole bunch of new stuff and things like that. So that is one concern. The other concern, and this is something where I'm going to pick up on the point that was raised about having a dial back button, and that would be for libraries. Now, whenever we upgrade, we also have to upgrade our libraries. Otherwise, you've got people in projects and they're loading in families from libraries, and the libraries have been saved in the older version of Revit, which works. There's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is the fact that when the family is being loaded, you do have that couple of second wait for Revit to upgrade the family and make it work with your version. And for that, I may be in a minority here, but I've always believed that families should be compatible with a couple of versions at least. To go on with the concern about technical support from Autodesk, Autodesk will support the current version and 3 versions back, right? And you do have access to a further 2 versions beyond that if you want to download the software. And I see that Dave has joined us. Yay, hello, Dave.
My terrible apologies for being late. I had something run over on me here, and I saw Rena's note, and I'm like, oh my, here I am. So I'm really sorry for being late, but I'm glad to catch in on here. And I kind of wanted to pick up on what Rena was talking about in there. And we actually switched over and started using an external service, Unify, for our library management a couple of years ago. And the reason why we did that was because of its ability to maintain multiple versions of the software. So like if I put something up in 2020, it automatically takes care of the upgrade for 2021 and 2022. So she's spot on with this. I mean, you want to make sure that your content is in a version that you can carry it forward for at least multiple releases. One of the other things that's really important about families that you need to be aware of too is the data files and the shared parameters. And I don't know if you already brought this up. We actually started making a requirement for our vendors where we get third-party content to not provide us with shared parameters in the families, because it was interfering with the contents and standards that we had to match with our schedules and with how we handled automation within our projects. And so, when it comes to family content and how that stuff should be working for you, I'm wholeheartedly on the page of, start with something like 2020 and move it all forward, but be willing to look at third-party aggregators to actually help you maintain this stuff. Because we used to do this stuff on our own, and it would take weeks for us to update a library from one version to another. It used to drive me crazy, right? And so that was a big thing that we got really heavily involved with.
Revit content and in the libraries, that subject is the sole reason why I am pushing for us to stay within 2 versions. Just because, as a leader, I don't want somebody spending time upgrading content when they should be focusing on a new, better workflow. Right now, we have to maintain 5 years worth of libraries, and we did implement a mandate a couple of years ago that any new content that we create would be in the newest version of Revit. So we're not going back and creating a new family in 2019. We're starting it in 2022. Because if your project's already started and going, there's chances you have very, very low chances that you need this new family. Because if you started in 2019, you are probably well into CA at this point, unless you started redesign, and then you should definitely be in a new version. But also deployments. I think when you have project teams and leaders who are pushing back, when you show them the facts that, do you realize how much storage this is taking on a server when I have all these deployments for older versions, and that is costing the company money. But I also have staff that is having to maintain that, which is costing money, as well as all the Revit content. And that, again, has cost in terms of storage, whether you use a third-party platform or not, and then staff to keep it up to date. And I think they quickly realized that, this is time and money better spent looking forward than trying to stay stuck in something that I'm comfortable with.
And I think this is a point where, you have to just throw up your hands and set down a mandate that the only libraries that are going to be maintained will be 2022. If you have a project in, let's say, 2019, and you need some new content, it will only be created on an as-needed basis, and that too with possibly some grumbling involved. Now, as far as upgrading libraries go, there is a Dynamo script, and I think late one December night in 2020, I ran that over our libraries. It ran overnight. Yeah, I sat around for an hour and then I just gave up and I went to bed. That is how long just upgrading libraries can take. There are other third-party applications. You've got CTC tools, for instance. They have got something that we have been using to upgrade our libraries, bring our standard libraries up to 2022. And that's actually been super duper helpful.
Yeah, we use that. I was just going to add to that. The one thing that, when you do that, it's great. It does help, and you're not manually doing one by one. But then there's also functionality that you might miss out on. So I can't remember what version of Revit where they went in and added the room location option. Well, all of our families don't have that turned on because we've just been upgrading it from the time that we created it. So anybody that is trying to do plumbing calculations or anything to use the fixtures, they're like, it doesn't work. And I'm like, I know, because the feature's not turned on. So that's been the other kind of side of this, is that if we limited how many versions of Revit we had, then when it does come to upgrade for 2023, the individual that is responsible for that would be looking at, well, instead of just running an upgrade tool, what improvements does Revit 2023 bring to this category? And what could I do to those families so that it works better in 2023? Rather than just upgrading it and saying, oh yeah, there's a new feature in there, but you as a team have to turn it on if you want to use that feature. For example, the rotate door tag, or not door tags, but the rotating of annotation tags and how that works. That is something you have to turn on in the family. It's not just automatically on and set up. So yeah.
I wanted to point out
great stuff.
Yeah, I want to point one more thing out, and I'll get off of this real quick. We did the same thing with templates, and that's also important too. Our project templates, we only upgrade the current release and one release back. And the main reason is that exact thing you're talking about, is that I don't want people to be dependent on older technology and older projects. And so, for example, we just rolled 2022 out this month. We actually had some other issues that came up with our deployments and how we're installing software. But the whole point is that maintaining the current release and one release back is the best way to handle things. The hard part is getting your clients to understand how important it is to do this. So it's not just a question of what we do with the families. It's not just a question of what we do with the templates. We have to make sure that our clients understand that, because they're so used to blanket throwing out a standard, say, use AutoCAD 2013 or newer, right? We don't want them getting into that habit that they've had for years. We've got to emphasize to them the importance of staying current on technology. So that's a hard part.
Consultants are another thing too. You have to
And
convince
consultants
all of
too.
them basically, and some will say we won't be able to upgrade because our plugin is not upgraded and stuff like that. I've been through that, but in general, it is annoying sometimes. Gets to that point. But to your point that you were talking about shared parameters and family, CTC has a really good family parameter pusher or something like that that can map and everything. So it's paid tool, but FYI on that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there that are really good.
There are.
So.
Oh, wow. That's great stuff, guys. Yeah. Totally over my head since I'm not a Revit guy. So this is really educational for me. Really great stuff.
You learn from us.
Yeah. So I enjoy learning new products and stuff. So I'm all about that. So the next topic I'd like to talk about is Revit work sharing. What is Revit work sharing? Are you taking advantage of the Revit work sharing? How does that work? If people are not using, some of our attendees are watching here, what is that? And how does that work?
Can't live without it.
So I'll take this first, okay? Couple things. BIM for remote work, BIM 360 is great. Of course, you are paying the piper for that, but the speed and everything is great. I think the reliability of models is great. However, if you are using server-based work sharing, that's fine. It's just make sure that my pet peeve has been with Autodesk is that the way they default settings for it. If you are doing local file server-based work sharing, please do yourself a huge favor and set this setting correctly. And I'll share this with you guys quickly so you can take a note in the background, but just do yourself some service on this one.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. This will make your files corrupt or file is not available error, especially if you're working through VPN and whatnot. Do yourself a huge favor. Set this to manual, because most of the time we don't even use this tool as much. And even if that, you don't need live updates from all the users. And don't worry about work sharing monitor. Sometimes it's also glitchy. It doesn't work sometimes. So I've stopped using it. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it with work sharing. BIM 360 is great, but again, it has some costs associated with it, but it works great, especially if you have remote working. So Autodesk did a good thing. Well, I guess for their part, gave free 3 months of BIM 360 to users when the pandemic started and got them hooked, I think. But it's good though, still.
And I think that was a big turning point for all of us who have been working on work shared files, because prior to the pandemic, whatever Fishbeck did was on our own servers. We were just doing a server-based file sharing. Just over one weekend, we took all of our projects and threw them up into BIM 360 between Friday evening, 5 p.m. on Friday, and 8 a.m. on Monday morning. All of the files were transferred over to BIM 360, and that brings along its own set of challenges. Now, you may have read some of my rants online, especially on LinkedIn. BIM 360 is a little more fragile and much less tolerant of any kind of corruption than your regular file-based server is going to be. So you do need to keep a very, very strict eye on things like the health of your model. Do you have any imported CAD files in your model? Do you have any corrupted families in your model? If, let's say, you have got a file and you're having trouble syncing it, for instance, then that would be a signal for you to download the file. You could go ahead, you could download the source files. And the nice thing about downloading a source file from BIM 360 is that it gives you a whole package. It gives you a zip file with your model as well as any linked models all in that file. And then you can go ahead and you can open it on your local drive. So that would be the signal for you to download your model and scan it. And of course, now we've got Dr. Revit bringing his stuff in. But, just to summarize whatever Nauman is going to say, and I know what Nauman is going to say because I've been hearing that for years.
Yes. No, all I have to say, though, I'm not going to drag on to this. The people can read it up online. But the point being is that now in BIM 360 2021 and over, I think in 2022, they have included the ability to download previous synced version, not published version. Because if you download it from the web, it is only the published version whenever you did that. We used to publish every day, twice a day, just because to keep backups that we could download from. But now you can go into Revit easily and say, hey, I want to download, and it's in the homepage, by the way. So you can easily download the previous versions. And just like you remember for restore backups from central models, basically like that. So.
And also, if you go into the Collaborate tab and manage models, you can navigate over to your project, open the project, and you can view versions, which is a lot less painful than what it would be if you had to go ahead and download the source file from BIM 360, because download the source file from BIM 360 only looks at published models, whereas managed cloud models within Revit, that will give you a history of versions of the file, whether it's published or not published. Also a sneaky trick, and I've had this question from a lot of customers indirectly as well, where you have got a user who is no longer with your organization. For whatever reason, that person is no longer involved with your projects, but while you're working on the model, you get the error that so-and-so needs to relinquish, and you cannot work on the element unless that person has relinquished. So this is an absolutely great way to get rid of, basically force relinquish the absent invisible person, where you would go into the Collaborate tab, into Manage Models, go to your project, and you can then force relinquish the users as you need to. Now, if you're working on a file shared project, then the easy way to go about that would be to go into File and Options, and under Options, just switch your username over to the absent user's username, and then you can open the model and relinquish. So, with BIM 360, there's a lot of really good stuff that can be done. Permissions, for instance, you can go in for role-based permissions. What we do, and what I've heard of a lot of other firms doing, is going in for company-based permissions, where when we have outside consultants, we just take the whole company and we give that company a level of permissions, so that anybody who comes in from that company who has been added to the project with that company email will automatically get the level of permission of access to our project, which gives us a lot of control.
Yeah, one thing though, when you said permission, if you have a template project, make sure that you have set up role-based permissions. So the priority is role-based, company-based, and then never ever individual-based typically. So the role-based, if you have a template and you have role-based permissions, then they will carry over to if you create a new project, basically. So I have created multiple roles for mechanical engineer and then mechanical engineer. Depending on the situation, if I need to create a new role, we'll do that. But that way, at least the template is the same. And then also this helps assign permissions in the design collaboration tool too. So it just kind of also is another tip and trick, I guess you should say.
So I kind of wanted to add, because I know, Tony, you said something in the beginning, and I don't know who all of our attendees here are, but just keeping in mind that we might have some AutoCAD users who are looking at converting to Revit. So just to kind of make sure everybody understands what Revit work sharing is. If any of you have worked in newer versions of Microsoft Word and have used, OneDrive, what Revit work sharing is a very, very early version of that. In Microsoft Word, you can now have more than one person in the file editing at the same time, and it's just one file. Autodesk had that for Revit, 10, 12 years ago, to where basically you can have more than one person working in one file co-authoring at the same time. So no longer do you have to have versions or segregated pieces of the project in a different file that you bring all together like you did in AutoCAD. Everybody's working from the one file, and therefore that's why the stuff that Numan brought up about, the less frequent updates. That's why you want that set up so you're not getting pinged by stuff that your coworker is updating. And having to update your model just for that to reflect that. So there's that aspect of it. And then on the BIM 360 side, I think HKS was one of the few companies that did not move everything over to BIM 360 overnight. And that's because we were already using BIM 360, and we had set kind of protocols in place. We realized, from a cost perspective, it was only beneficial to use BIM 360 if your consultants are there with you. And then even more so when we went remote, we had a lot of pressure from everybody to move to BIM 360. But the one question we would ask them immediately is, well, where are your consultants? Are they on BIM 360? No, we're still getting manual files from them. And we began to ask the process, well, then how do you link their model in? And they're like, oh, we'll just link it from the file server. And I was like, that's going to be just as slow, if not slower. And then we're like, okay, well, we'll upload it to BIM 360. And I was like, all right, do that. Tell me how long it takes you to download it from what they're sending it to you from, and then to host it. And then you're going to do that every week, every 2 weeks. Can you start to add up the time? And quickly leadership looked at that again and said, oh, so it's best if I get my consultant on here as well. And then guess what? Now you don't need manual updates. You see their updates as they're working on it. They see your updates. You can also segregate that. If they don't want to see your updates, you can set it up that way as well. But I think a lot of individuals didn't realize that early on. And I've talked to people who are fully BIM 360, and they're like, yeah, we now have to figure out how we get everybody else up there, because now we're dealing with people saying, okay, it takes me too long to get my consultant's model loaded up here, and now somebody has to do this every week. We didn't used to have to do that. So that is something to keep in mind with BIM 360 is, yes, it's a cloud-based platform, but it was invented so that everybody is working together, and this whole idea of how Revit was supposed to work 10 years ago can start to become a reality, to where you are seeing your structural engineer, your mechanical engineer's models within your model, and it is the latest and greatest. So you can tell whether they resized that beam or not, or whether they moved that mechanical equipment a day from now versus 2 weeks from now, and then realize that they didn't do it, and now you have to have another discussion with them. So
I had a customer tell when the whole BIM 360 thing came out, before they labeled it the construction cloud. High profile architecture firm. I met with his IT guy and their BIM manager. Very smart, intelligent people. But I think it was, and I'm telling the story because of a point here. He says, we're moving all of our files over to BIM 360. Our entire server, all of our files are going to be on BIM 360. And I said, I don't think you know what BIM 360 is. And so it's indicative of the fact that sometimes things are misunderstood, and it permeates, and and they keep that mentality until they find out. And so what he had overheard IT say is that we're going to be moving all of our our Revit stuff over. But even at that time, for their situation, that also wasn't practical for the same reasons that you're mentioning there, Vicki. So really, it just comes down to understanding what the technology is, and not everybody's on the same footing. So especially as things evolve, right? As things change, and it's just a matter of educating folks. But
so I have to chime in here, because I'm the antithesis of what you're talking about right now. And I'm going to explain it.
Me too.
Back in June, everybody knows what happened when COVID hit. We started sending people home, right? June 2020, we had a malware attack. We have 67 offices, 700 servers. We were shut down in the span of 1 hour. Okay. We lost connectivity to all of our networks. And the only projects that were safe were what were hosted up in BIM 360 and what were hosted in ProjectWise. And it made us take a hard look that I don't think a lot of other people ever get to see. What are we really trying to do? We have resiliency problems. We have, the maintenance, the very survival of our company based on the decisions we make about working with infrastructure that's 20 and 30 years old, and that's your local area network and WANs, which you couldn't pay me to go back to working in that environment for one dime. I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. And I'll tell you the reason why. The whole infrastructure that's been out there for LAN and WAN technology is outdated. It's slow. It is not going to come close to matching what you do with cloud-based technologies like ProjectWise Connect and BIM 360 Autodesk Construction Cloud. They can't. We picked up our whole company and moved everything to the cloud in 6 months. Think about that.
Impressive.
Thousands of projects that we were able to recover from a cyber attack and put ourselves in a more secure situation than we were in before. So it's not just a case about, and work sharing is a topic that you're talking about, how people work to collaborate together is a root cause of this, because think about it. We would have people that would say, okay, I have my CAD files. This is on my server here where electrical's working, here where mechanical working. They have the same files on their server, right? Then you have architectural, same files on their server, and we're copying it back and forth between all these different locations. There was no single source of truth. BIM 360 was the root of getting us back to that platform where we had the single source of truth. But the real key in here in understanding work sharing is now the ability to understand that we're working collaboratively. We're working within that one file so you can see the changes immediately.
And so
you choose.
One thing to make clear is that there is that what you're describing, David, and I totally agree with you on what you're saying, is the intersection of the cloud computing for infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, as well as the BIM 360. And there is a very great subject right there, right at that intersection.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't agree more that when you go VDI or virtual, basically a virtual computing, right, where your entire office is elsewhere, it enables so many more other things. And yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there. I think the delineation between BIM 360 and its current state, not where it's going, right, and its ability for Revit work sharing, there's some overlap between that and VDI cloud computing. There could be.
Yep, there is.
But whatever the case, the principle still stands, is that there is just there's really no going back, I think, once people see the light of day of LAN WAN being, like you said, dinosaur technology. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
I do want to add, though, that everybody should keep in mind that these cloud platforms are hosted on somebody else's platform. So BIM 360 is hosted on Amazon Web Services. And when Amazon Web Services had a series of outages last year, we faced the opposite issue of, well, we have all of these cloud models and we don't have access to a single one. And it could also cause corruption issues. So, I mean, there's pros and cons on both sides. I do know that companies have all, jumped to Clarity or other software too, because now they're like, well, all these models that we have on the cloud, we need a quick way of downloading those published copies. So we have archived backups on our server in case something does hit Amazon Web Services and it's not just a couple of hours of outages. So those are all things you have to think about. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, David, because some things do sound amazing in the beginning. And then once you start using it, you're like, oh, crap, I didn't think about that aspect of it.
That's where your IT company comes in. They should have a strong, disaster recovery plan for things like that. But when an EMP hits, we're all going down.
Yeah.
We do now. I promise you that.
Yeah.
But, and that's the good point. And the thing I want to point out about all this, when we get back to talking about work sharing, is a workflow itself and understanding the paradigm shift of where people were with technology really started changing with COVID, right? Because all of a sudden we're forcing people to work from home. And so all these new tools that we were kind of making a half-hearted attempt to get into, all of a sudden the urgency for doing this changed, right? And so now you have all these people working at home, and how do you handle those systems? So what we've had to do is educate people how important your internet connection is, right? how important it is that you understand the workflow structure. You're not just going to open up a Revit model and start working and treat. You also don't want to treat work sets like layers, which I know people do, right? They just set the layer current and they don't really set the work set current. So they really don't understand full ownership of an object versus element borrowing. So we've had to explain that difference to people so that they understand it. But these are all technology shifts that people are not accustomed to, right? Because if you're in the AutoCAD world or the MicroStation world or whatever 2D platform you're in, these are definitely not things that you're not used to. So it's all about training and making sure that you have the right goals and standards set up for everybody in your company, and you push that really hard. So that's just one of the things that we really work on hard. Great points, though. I mean, it's really funny the difference between all of us and how we handle all these things.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. That's why I invited, experts from across the board from small, large companies, try to get some in the public, private sector. The other one I didn't get was the military sector. That's going to be even more challenging in the military.
Yes.
They don't like anything outside in the cloud, so
that's changing though.
So we'll see how that goes. I think it's going to open up a lot once the military gets on board too with the cloud. So I still remember at one AU got into a big argument about that whole cloud thing when we were introducing it, I think 4 years ago on the discussion groups and one of our private discussions, and we had some government people there. So you're like, we're never going to be going that way. So, no, really great stuff. Let's see here. I think somebody posted something. So we had Timothy post something on the chat or Q&A, actually on the chat. Let's see, nothing. 3 years old. Remote working hardware similar to.
I think the question is on hardware recommendation for utilizing Revit.
Yeah, I have any recommendations?
Well, I just sent that message to Tony by accident. But really, you really need something that has some oomph to it. If you've got a system that's more than 3 years old, you might have some issues. I don't know if you guys are aware about this, but Windows 11 is also causing a stir, because if you've got a 3 or 4 year old system, there's not high likelihood that Windows 11 can't be installed on it, right? I've got that with my own home system that's 5 years old that I do my directly support on, right? Yeah. And so the big thing you want to do is make sure that you have, decent video graphics, have some form of NVIDIA or something that's well documented and supported, at least 32 gig of RAM. The big thing, and I guarantee you, Rena and I face this a bunch. People run out their daggum hard drives and they fill them up all the time. And they don't realize how important it is to have an adequately sized hard drive. We don't allow anything less than a terabyte, right? So that's one of the big things. And then making sure your users have a good, solid internet connection at home. In other words, don't be doing wireless connections over a 10 meg download speed. You don't want to do that. You'll be hating life if you do that, right? So I'm running 600 meg down with an Orbi Wi-Fi mesh in my house to keep that performance up for the system to do that to run on Wi-Fi. So just make sure that you want to use something fairly current. Be aware of the consequences of Windows 11 and what it's going to do to your systems. Those are the big things that I can point out.
Definitely.
For me, I think I would say that the higher processor speed for the single core is better, because still Revit is a lot of threads that it runs on single. And the other item would be to make sure it's an SSD drive. If you want, most of the laptops now can take 2 SSD drives, so you can offload the Windows temp and also other even AutoCAD BIM 360 Autodesk desktop connector. You can reroute it as well, and the BIM 360 content that gets downloaded as well for Revit worksharing can be rerouted to those folders too. So having adequate space is critical, and use the Windows storage sense technology. It empties the temp folder for you now automatically. So I would highly recommend turning that setting on.
That's a good one.
Quick question to y'all. So what do y'all think about these companies that do kind of virtual machines? One company I can think of, I have a programmer just down the hallway. He uses virtual machines, gaming systems. He pays like $40 a month, high-end gaming systems, and super fast. And everything's run off a cheap tablet with a keyboard on it, but he's virtually running it on a virtual machine gaming system. And what are your thoughts? Have y'all tried that, where you're paying the $40 a month on this gaming virtual computer He's got fast internet speeds, and he's got a really cheap $100 tablet, and he's running this thing off. Have you attempted something like that on Revit?
I'll kick it off real quick. There are trade-offs, to go back to Vicki's points, there are trade-offs. It's not a be-all end-all solution.
Just for home users, not work.
Well, no, even for mid-sized to, something under 100 people is what I've seen. Nothing larger than that. Larger firms, sometimes they're still having their appliances on site, but as I think that's where things are going to go. And that really is speaks to David, your point earlier. The performance is what you allocate to it. So I've seen poor performance and I've seen great performance. So I'll leave my comments right there.
Yeah, I think on those kind of systems, one thing that people still have to realize is the computing power is on the other side somewhere, wherever it is. And that may be fabulous, but if you still have very, very crappy internet at home, you are going to be more frustrated than you were with a slower machine at home, because every click, every type is like, 10-second, 20-second lag that starts to add up, and you just lose your mind trying to do that.
I run a business network at home in my apartment, and then here we get ridiculous, almost gigabyte, those Google gigabyte speeds in here. I think I did a test, it was 500, and some of the people were getting 700. And so, but yeah, the internet speed is going to be really controlling all that. But I thought it was kind of amazing that he was using this cheap little tablet and running this gaming system virtually. And he goes, yeah, I do all my coding through that. And then I have another PC running some other stuff. And he's a gadget guy like me. So I was like, I wonder if anybody's ever attempted Revit like that or Civil 3D. And they just can't afford a new system. So they would just, it's an alternative to pay $40 to go run this virtual gaming system.
Where is he getting this $40 from?
I'm sitting there going, I like that $40 system too.
Those are usually pretty by the hour, very expensive. But
Really?
I mean, we used to use that at Walt Disney. I mean, all the consultant had to have a access. I mean, virtual machine, because they could not work on their own network. It was a very secluded network, so everybody was working on a virtual machine, basically. Enscape ran, but kind of okay. I mean, I wouldn't say like, but don't expect the performance of a regular, you're sitting there unless you dump in a lot of money. So
yeah, one of the companies he showed me, I don't know if this is the one he's using, but it was called Shadow. When they got specs of some of their computers, they actually they got pretty good specs, but they've kind of downgraded because they used to have these amazing specs. That's the one I found online. I have to ask him which one he's using, but it's called Shadow. Shadow.tech. So, and that's one of them that showed it, and I'm like, oh, okay, you can go and pay that much to run.
We're big VMware and Citrix VDI users. Again, big company. But the instance that you have, it's really important that they have a good video card on them. That's a critical step that we have to make sure. And that, the advantage is you have a lot of RAM, but again, you're going through a straw, right?
Yep.
And so just remember, your internet access all of a sudden is ported through that VDI. And there's a lot of things that can come into play. I tell people right now, if you're doing, what is it that we're talking about in here? If you're signed in over a VPN, crawl into a hole and just stop. Do not run Revit over a VPN for any circumstances whatsoever. You're going to hate life. You're going to be mad at us. Here, you heard it today. Revit and VPNs do not play nice. They are just not designed to handle the amount of data that goes back and forth. Don't do it.
Well, awesome. I don't want to take up any more of y'all's time. I know everyone's extremely busy. The last topic we're going to talk about is just BIM workflows, what you were doing, with other third-party apps or, your BIM workflow right now. So, but we could actually pick that up on the next session. We can go more in depth, but I want to thank all the attendees that attended today. This webinar has been recorded, so we'll post it on the CivilCAD LS YouTube channel. And then I'll share it to the expert leads, also our panelists also. That way they can keep it for themselves also. But I want to thank everybody. Our panelists coming in town. I think this was a great one, a really good one. I learned a lot. I'm a beginner. Yeah. I figure everybody's really busy. We had some other people that weren't able to attend, so I'm sure things came up. So I've been late to webinars. So
Rena will give me a hard time about it for days now. So you're late.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I know that sending the hate mail would work.
so for all the attendees that are still online, we post and create these webinars on our user group platform, which is on the MeWe platform. And there, this month, I think we've had 3 webinars already, some live streaming. I think we've done some trivia. So, a lot of our members go in there and chat, ask questions on our DFW BIM infrastructure user group on the MeWe. So it is free. And that's where we are daily. A lot of our attendees here are members already. And so it's really a great platform. And, but all right, I'll let y'all go. Thanks everyone. And y'all have a great day. Stay safe. And
Okay, great seeing everybody.
Yep. Thanks. Love you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you again.
Bye.